Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach Ani, the podcast. Okay, I just have to start off by saying thank you guys so much. Thank you for the texts and the DMs and the messages and all of just the wonderful feedback over I think it was my most recent episode of setting goals when you have ADHD or you're ADD, or essentially you are neurodivergent in some way, shape, or form. It's a different life. And you know what? I heard something really interesting the other day. It was obviously something on TikTok, and someone was like, ADD and ADHD and autism, and people just like using those terms, and they say everybody has it. And someone was like, I would actually beg to differ that we can actually just point it out more now, and we can figure it out more now. So how many people have we failed before because we didn't have a term or a name for something? Honestly, and I think it's the same way of like, let's just talk about like transgender men and women when they're like, it's a this, it's a that. Okay, well, maybe people back in the day didn't have such a hard time because men got to wear fucking dresses. Like, who gives a shit? Do you know what I mean? It's shit like that I feel people want to get up in arms and claim it to be something that it potentially isn't, when really it's just the way that our brains work now. And that's really what I want to, I'm going to stick to my ADHD train right now, because I have been doing so much research on it, because the more that I learn, the more I feel like I'm figuring out how my own brain works. And the more that I am able to learn about how my brain works, the more I'm able to not correct it, because there's nothing wrong with me, nor is there anything wrong with you, but the more I'm able to work with myself to make it work. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to give you guys like I'm going to say this. A lot of people with ADHD, or people even with ADD, when they struggle to do something or get on a topic or whatever it is, all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're fucking lazy. They just don't want to do it, this and that. When that's actually not the circumstance at all. It's when your brain is wired differently, because when you are not neurotypical and you are neurodivergent, your brain is literally wired different. It does not work the same as everybody else's, which means the shit that works for everybody else most fucking certainly does not and will not work for you. Neither one of you are right or wrong. Neither one of you are smarter or better or more whatever than the other. It's just different. So here is some interesting things that I've learned and that I've even once again started implementing in my own life and kind of testing, like, just to see if it works. And it does. At least it's worked for me. I don't know, it might not work for you, but it's worked for me so far. So I want to talk a little bit about how, when you have ADHD, at least when you have ADHD, how your mind works. And essentially, guys, your brain just works quickly. And if you know me, if you have met me, if you have ever spoken to me for even half a second, you know that when I talk very quickly. When I walk very fast. When I do things, I just do things very quickly. And something that I've heard a lot that I think I talked about in the last episode is people are like, well, how do you get so much done in such a short amount of time? Like, how do you have the energy? And my answer is always, I don't know, I just do. I rarely drink coffee. I never drink energy drinks. I don't drink soda. I don't have a lot of caffeine. So I don't know. Okay. That's always my answer. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just like this. My energy has just always been there, but I think that's more attributed to ADHD than just like, it's my natural state of being. Do you know what I mean? Which also means an ADHD brain just works faster. Now, once again, it's not to say that someone who's neurotypical, that they're dumber or that they're slow. That's not what I'm saying. So do not get up in arms right now. What I'm saying is our brains just fire off so fast. So once again, if you've ever met me, the joke in my family is, so I actually think my mom has ADHD too, but I'm gonna leave that alone for right now. We always make the joke that I can listen and have one conversation in one ear and have one conversation in the other ear. And here's what's crazy. They've started testing this with music all over on TikTok, of people literally making music for people with ADHD. And they're like, if you can listen and hear and understand with ease that these are two different songs being layered completely on top of one another, and you don't struggle with at all, and like you don't struggle hearing both of them, there might be a chance that you are neurodivergent of some way, shape, or form. So hearing that was really interesting. And what they also say is that when you are ADD or ADHD, you don't think in a linear fashion. You don't think number 1 to number 2 to number 3 to number 4. You kind of, not that you think all over the place in a bad way, it's not linear. But what that also means is you have the chance to be extraordinarily creative and also be an amazing problem solver, because you're not thinking the way that everybody else is. So I will say this: if you've ever been made to feel weird or off or slow or lazy or just whatever because you do have this, because you have ADD or ADHD or just neurodivergent in some way, shape, or form, also realize, if you ask me, it's a superpower. The fact that I can just wake up and have all sorts of energy is fucking amazing to me. And that I don't rely on caffeine. I don't rely on energy drinks. I don't have to do these, I'll say it once again, like I said on the last podcast, I think these crazy, I have to have this routine or the world is ending. Frankly, I think that's a superpower of mine. I think that's really great. But then that also means, like I talked about last episode, I have to be aware of the low days, the low energy days, where it then becomes a little bit harder to get yourself motivated, a little bit harder to just move and do shit and get started. Which brings me to something that I learned that was not, I might have talked about this episode, I don't remember, but something that I was introduced to by my friend who has ADD, and it's called body doubling. I have done this quite often. I did not know there was a name for it. I did not know there was a reason for it. It's just something that I've done naturally, honestly, with my mom a lot. And it's, imagine this: you're at home, you're working, you're trying to clean, you're trying to get shit done. It's just not working. Ugh, you don't feel like it. It's just so hard to get moving, it's the worst. Have you ever just called someone on FaceTime or set them on the phone, and you kind of set the phone down and you're not really talking? You're not really engaging with each other. You're not really hanging out. You're not actually really doing shit with each other. But for some reason, having them there just helps. Just kind of feels nice. And all of a sudden, you're more productive. You're cleaning a little bit more. You're typing. Your brain is focusing more. It's called body doubling, guys. And it's fucking wild. It works. So I will tell you, on days when it's been a little bit rough, or honestly, I did this yesterday. So in case you don't know, I recorded a photography course for hairstylists for Inside of the Salon. And it's taken a little bit to get started because there were just so many other things. But I officially have it together. And I'm so proud of it. And as I was going, so it'll be coming out soon. It'll be coming soon. So as soon as I hit this point yesterday, and I love technology. I love technology. I thrive in technology. It makes me so happy. I could not figure something out. And I read every article. I watched a video. And if you know me, videos do not hold my attention in any way, shape, or form. They don't work for me. And I think I know why now, but I'll explain that in a bit. So I'm sitting there, I read the articles, I went back and forth with support, I watched a video, all these things. And it just something wasn't clicking to where I ended up FaceTiming my friend. And he's like, what's going on? And I was like, I can't, fuck. Have you ever had that moment where you're just it's driving me insane, I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. So I was like, can I just talk to you about it? Even though I know you don't have a solution, I just need to say it out loud. He was like, I'm ready, give it to me. So I'm walking him through, telling him all these things. And it got to a point where he was just kind of off doing his own thing. We're still on the phone. We're still FaceTiming. My phone is literally in front of me. I can see him. But all of a sudden, things started to just click a little bit more that helped me get out of that rut. Because having that person there, even though they were not physically there, was helpful. And so some of you, it might even work if someone is in the house. If you're like, I have to clean, I have to get this done, I want to do this. Sometimes just having someone sit on the couch and be in the same room and kind of give you attention, but not really, is incredibly helpful. So here's the deal. You've heard me say 1,000 times, I fucking hate videos. I hate videos so much. I think I know why. I don't do well with not singular focus. I like multitasking. I like one ear hearing one thing and one ear hearing another thing. I like there to be, if it's just me in a silent room, I can focus, but only for so long. And once my focus, it's once my reserves of focus are gone, then it's maybe I should get up in, maybe I should, or should I do, what if I did, what if? And before, I've obviously like allowed myself that leeway to get up, move around, like restart my brain, find more reserves of focus, which sometimes work and sometimes doesn't. But I think that's why I don't like videos, because you just have one thing to look at. And like, you can't really do anything else. You can't go anywhere else. You can't really focus. It's just like one thing. And frankly, that drives me batshit fucking crazy. So here is what I learned. Okay, I have to pull it up to make sure I say it exactly. There is something called the load theory of selection attention. And I had not heard about this until I literally started going through and like researching ADHD and how the brain works and what does work and what doesn't work. And they're saying that this concept essentially says there is early selection attention, and then there is late selection attention. So the early selection is essentially concentrating or focusing on something deliberately. I am going to do this. This needs to get done. I need to put this away. I need to put this order in. This needs to be done. Okay, great, phenomenal, amazing. But we all know life doesn't really work that way, especially if you're neurodivergent. Just don't feel like that, it happens. So then late selection is being directed involuntary, which essentially says you are fucking being distracted. You're being distracted. Early selection is an intentional focus, and late selection is you're being distracted. It's involuntary. You can't help it. I always say, have you ever had something tickle your brain? Like you hear a sound and you have to repeat it, or you hear someone with an accent and you can't help but like say the thing that they said. And the problem with that is then it feels like you're mocking them, but you're not. It just like tickled your ear and you had to say it to get it out of your system. I was also recently told that if you have a song stuck in your head, here's what's insane. My boyfriend he's neurotypical, right? I'm obviously not. And I asked him, I was like, don't you just hate when a song gets stuck in your head and you can't stop repeating it over and over and over until you repeat it enough that it's finally out of your head? And he was like, no. I'm like, what do you mean? No. What do you mean? You've never had a song stuck in my head? He's like, yeah, like maybe for a minute. I'm like, you haven't spent all day repeating the same song? He's like, no. I'm like, you've never hit repeat on one song for a 30-minute drive? He's like, what the? No. My mind was fucking blown. But I was told that if this happens to you, finish the song. If you can't remember the words, you can make up the words, you can make up the lyrics, you can make up the melody, whatever you want, just finish it. Because if you convince yourself it's finished in your brain, it'll go away. Which brings me to music. God help us all. I work really great with music on. And turns out the reason is that type of rhythm actually builds and promotes focus for people with ADHD. Essentially what it does is, remember I talked about early selection, which is an intentional focus, and late selection, which is essentially, it's not intentional, it's involuntary, it's just a distraction. Imagine you can only hear two things at once, or that as someone who's neurodivergent, you always hear two things at once. If all you're focused on is work, you have like the ability to take something else in that then starts attracting your attention and you can't help but keep looking at it and you're not focused anymore. But if you have the thing that you're focusing on and then you're playing music, you now have both of those things covered, and it actually takes away from you being able to be distracted. Now, there's also a caveat to this. Depends what kind of music. Of course. And they say some things are better than others, but at the end of the day, it is going to come down to the person themselves. You guys know how they say there's white noise in the background? I don't like white noise. I like brown noise. Honestly, I can't even really tell you the difference. White noise to me, it tickles my brain in a way that I don't like. It bothers me. I feel like I get more distracted. But if you go on Spotify and you literally search brown noise playlist, I'm obsessed with it. I love it. And I do not know why, but it just like, it just like tickles my brain in a really nice way where I can focus with that. They also say having music with no words might actually make it easier for you to focus. Now, some people like piano music, some people like classical, some people like lo-fi beats. I mean, there's so many different ways you can do it, but the entire point is find what works for you. Because at this point I've realized lazy, I feel, not that I don't think lazy exists, but hear me out. What if it's not lazy? What if it's just you haven't found the way your brain works? I will say I do think there are some people that are less motivated than others to hit goals and reach goals and build and do all these things. I do believe that exists, but what if laziness is you're really like trying to make your brain work in a way that your brain doesn't work? Like you're trying to take it off, like to this off-beaten path with trees and there's ditches and there's weeds and like it just doesn't work. So what if instead we just figured out what like could work for our brains and then structure our day to be that way? Another thing I learned about the other day is something called bilateral stimulation is what it was. If you, honestly, you can find a lot of it you can find it on Spotify. You can also find it on TikTok, 8D as in Delta, 8D music or 8D stimulation, 8D audio, some version of that. And they say you need to put headphones in when you listen to it because the music does, when you play like a normal song with headphones on, you hear both the music and the beat and the bass, you hear it in both ears at once. Not with 8D. With 8D, it jumps back and forth from ear to ear. And they say that's actually really great if you're stressed out, if you have anxiety, if you're like facing burnout or you're like autistic, that once again, I hate to say keeps tickling the brain, but that actually calms your brain down. And the other day, this is probably a few days ago now, I was, like when you wake up and you're like, I need to clean. I don't want to fucking clean. Ugh. I had that morning and then I was like, let's try this out. Let's just put music in. Let's play it out loud. Let's see what happens. And I started finding playlists for, they're literally called ADHD playlists. They're all over Spotify, but some were like for cleaning, for motivation, for relaxing, where people have started to put this together because it triggers your brain to working in the way you need it to work. And I am fascinated. Like at this point, I feel like I don't know if I can stop talking about it because I didn't know these things about myself, and now hearing them and knowing them and learning them is changing the way that I operate day in and day out. So what if you did the same for you? What if you did the same for your staff? If like for example, even the course that I'm creating, everything is video, it's audio, and it's written. So frankly, it does not matter which way your brain learns, which way you like to learn, which way it works. There is something in there for everyone. It will work no matter what. So what if you treated your salon the same way? Or your business, like instead of expecting every single person to learn the exact same way, what if you figured out, this person learns better like this? I think I'm a fucking horrendous student. Here's something else. Because my brain moves so quickly, in my mind, I tend to finish sentences for other people before they finished it, which means I try to respond before they're finished with their sentence. I'm not saying it's polite. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that I'm aware that I do that. And I try to the depths of my soul to catch myself from doing it and to stop myself. But there are times where I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, sorry, yes, keep going. I am listening because I'm already like, yes. Let me answer. Yes, I agree. Yeah, my brain it just goes, which means sometimes when people are trying to teach me things in my mind, I've already finished their sentence with what I think they're going to fucking say. It's not just it's really not sometimes. And I've been like, yeah, because of you, they're like, nope. And I'm like, yep. Okay, got it. Okay, cool. It's so difficult. So maybe this is something you have to start thinking about. If you have people on your staff that are neurotypical and neurodivergent, how can you then go through and teach and train them both in a way that tickles both of their brains, in a way that makes sense, in a way that they are able to consume all of the education and comprehend most of it, as opposed to like in one ear and out the other, because it just doesn't hit them right. And I'll also say this, there is something called recognition responsive euphoria. Do you have staff members, or maybe you, that when someone praises you and they're like, wow, good job, it looks beautiful, you're like, ah, and you're more apt and likely to do more? That's also an ADHD, ADD thing. FYI, I learned that. And some people respond the complete opposite. Some people, if you tell them, wow, great job, they're like, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, it's really fascinating. But I also recommend that this is something that you look into. The more you understand your staff, the more you understand yourself, the more you understand how your brain works and what works for your brain, the more you can honestly make your life fucking easy and stop beating yourself up every single step of the way because you're not doing shit like everybody else. Fuck everybody else. Like, honestly, that's probably the best and nicest way I can say it. Who gives a shit? If someone likes to get up at 4 a.m. and run through a crazy routine, great. If you want to get up at 9 a.m. and do a short routine and you're still getting just as much done as anybody else in a day, who cares? It's not about what works for someone else. It's about what works for you. And the fact that it was the middle of the day just now, and I was like, you know what? I cannot focus anymore. I need to take a break. And I sat down with my dogs for 45 minutes and threw tennis ball after tennis ball so that they would wear out. And that gave my brain a break to then come back, play some music, and get started again. That works for me. And maybe for somebody else, they hear that I took a 45-minute break to throw a ball with my dog in the middle of the day, and they're like, what a lazy sack of shit. Cool. But guess what? It worked for me. And I got everything done that I wanted to get done. It's like barely 2 p.m. Stop judging yourself based on what everybody else does. Stop judging yourself based on how everybody else works, on what they deem to be right or wrong. Make what's right for you. Be damned everybody else. Do what works for you, for your brain, for your mental, emotional, physical health and well-being. And I can guarantee, like, life gets so much easier when you put yourself first. You know how nice life is when you put yourself first? I'll let you know. It's great. So with that being said, thank you for coming to another episode of Coach Ani, the podcast. Please, 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 I would love to hear your feedback. I want to hear what you're saying. I would love to hear your feedback. I would love to hear all the things. And if there's something you want me to talk about specifically, please let me know. If you like this whole ADHD train that I'm currently on, because I clearly can't stop, also please let me know. Because as someone who's running 2 businesses right now, I've really had to make sure that I can work to the best of my abilities at all times, which means my days might look a little bit funky to other people, but they really work well for me. So guys, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.